Hey everybody, it is Nathan Selove with another 5 misconceptions about autism and autistics. Y'all seemed to enjoy the first video that I did about this, so here is the second one. A reminder, the purpose of this video is to hopefully inform neurotypicals so they're not making generalizations of autistics, and to hopefully say some things that other autistics might find relatable. Number 1, autistics lack empathy. So this particular area has been thoroughly studied in the area of psychology. And what they found is that from a psychological standpoint, it's not that autistics lack empathy, it's that they lack a specific type of empathy. So according to world-renowned psychologist Simon Baron-Cohen, who, yes, is the cousin of one Sacha Baron Cohen, apparently they have a very smart family, there are 2 primary types of empathy: affective empathy and cognitive empathy. Affective empathy is the desire to appropriately respond to somebody in a way that meets their emotional needs, whereas cognitive empathy is knowing what you need to do in order to achieve somebody's emotional needs. So what Simon Baron-Cohen found was basically that there were deficits among the autism community with regard to cognitive empathy, but autistics had a large degree of affective empathy, meaning that this idea that autistics just don't care about your feelings is not true at all. And I would even go a step further and say that the idea that we have deficits in cognitive empathy is primarily focused on our ability to empathize with neurotypicals rather than other autistics. So if you judged our ability to relate to other autistics, then we might not even be lacking that much in cognitive empathy either. Number 2, autism has a look. I get this a lot. When I tell people I'm autistic, they say stuff like, "You don't look autistic." Now, there might be some visual traits that are associated with autism, but all in all, autism really does not have a specific look. So don't go around assuming that other people are autistic just because they have a look that you think makes them look autistic, but also don't go around assuming that a person can't be autistic because they don't have those traits. Misconception number 3, and this one might lose me some subscribers. Vaccines cause autism. Vaccines do not cause autism. So the basis for this is twofold. First, there was this study by this dude named Andrew Wakefield, and basically, he had a tiny sample size, and his entire methodology and findings have been repeatedly rebuked and debunked by the entire scientific community, and like 1,000 other studies have attempted to replicate the results of his experiment to find a link between vaccines and autism, and none of them ever have. And the other basis is the idea that there have been more vaccines that have been given over the course of the last few decades, and there has also been an increase in the number of people diagnosed with autism over the last few decades. But this is what we refer to as a correlation without a causation. And in order to prove that it's a correlation without causation, you have to figure out what the hidden variable is. And in this case, the hidden variables are pretty obvious. There have been more vaccines because more vaccines have been developed because we have been scientifically discovering new ways to solve disease. And there have been more diagnoses of autism for several reasons. The biggest reason is the fact that there has been better early screening. Another major reason is that the criteria for what constitutes autism has broadened quite a bit. So it's not that more autistics have been created, it's that we have broadened our understanding of what constitutes autism. Number 4 on our list. Autistics are introverts. Now, it is absolutely true that a lot of autistics are introverts. And in fact, I wouldn't even be that surprised if it was a majority of autistics. However, not all autistics are introverts. I'm a very extroverted person. I love talking to people. I love being around people. Now, the problem is that some autistics don't know how to socialize with neurotypicals in ways that make neurotypicals feel comfortable. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to talk to people, that we don't want to have connections. And honestly, even most extroverted autistics that I know still desire human connection. So don't assume that ignoring autistics or leaving them out is doing them a favor. And the final misconception that I want to talk about today is that autism is primarily a white issue. There is definitely this idea when people picture someone with autism, they often do picture a white person, usually a white guy. A while back, I did an interview with my friend Anthony, who is a black person on the autism spectrum. And one of the points that we discussed in this interview, which you should totally go back and look at, is the fact that The discrepancy between diagnosis of black people versus white people is very likely not to do with biology, but rather to do more with sociology. And one of the reasons that we discussed for this is that there does seem to be a social tendency for people in authority to attribute the actions of a young black autistic as being misbehavior, whereas the actions of a young white autistic is more likely to be attributed to them having a disability. Good old-fashioned racism. Another important point to bring up here is economics. Now, we've discussed on this channel before the fact that access to a diagnosis is a privilege. Some people might not be able to afford to get a diagnosis. Some people might not live in an area in which they have accessibility to a diagnosis. And considering the fact that according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the poverty rate for black Americans is 18.8%, whereas the poverty rate for white Americans is 7.3%, it's no wonder that there seems to be a discrepancy. Economically failing a group of Americans will inevitably lead to other societal failures. So keep this in mind the next time you're about to judge somebody. Well, that is today's video. Thank you all for watching. If you liked this episode, please give it a like, a share, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, check out some of my other stuff, and if you want to support the channel in other ways, support me on Patreon, and you will see me in the next one.